In the heart of a sterile, gleaming hospital, a young black mother named Amara clutches her feverish son and pleads for help. But her voice is swallowed by the indifference around her. Glances full of judgment replace compassion, and each passing minute deepens the weight of humiliation. The head doctor sees her but turns away, certain she's not worth his time. As her child's breath grows shallow, desperation drives her to her knees. But no one comes. The polished floor of St. Alden's Hospital reflected the harsh fluorescent lights like a mirror, cold, flawless, and utterly unfeeling. In the middle of that sterile perfection, Amara sat hunched in a plastic chair, her 5-year-old son Malik limp in her arms. His small chest heaved with labored breaths, a faint wheeze rattling from deep inside his lungs. "Please," she whispered to the receptionist for the 3rd time, her voice trembling. "He's getting worse. He needs a doctor now." The woman behind the desk didn't look up. "You'll have to wait your turn," she said flatly, tapping at her keyboard. Amara glanced at the digital screen. 17 names had been called since she arrived. All of them had walked in after her. Her name still didn't appear. Around her, people shifted uncomfortably. A middle-aged man in a suit muttered, "Some people will do anything for free treatment." A young woman pulled her designer purse closer, eyes darting at Amara's frayed sweater and scuffed shoes. Every whisper felt like a lash. She tried to focus on Malik. His skin was hot and damp, his eyelids fluttering. "Stay with me, baby," she murmured, brushing sweat from his forehead. "Mama's here. Just hold on." Across the lobby, Dr. Charles Whitman emerged from the hallway, his white coat billowing slightly as he strode past. He glanced in her direction, his eyes meeting hers for the briefest second, and then slid past as if she were invisible. "Doctor!" Amara's voice cracked as she stood. "Please, my son. He can't breathe." Whitman didn't stop. "Triage is at the desk," he said over his shoulder, not breaking stride. Amara sank back into the chair, shame burning her cheeks. Memories flooded back. Nurses calling security when she asked too many questions. Neighbors crossing the street to avoid her. She had promised herself Malik would never feel that sting. But here they were. Minutes blurred into an hour. Malik's breaths grew shorter, shallow gasps between painful pauses. Panic clawed at her chest. She stumbled to the reception counter again, tears streaking her face. "I'm begging you," she said, voice raw. "Please." "He's not okay," the receptionist sighed, exasperated. "Ma'am, sit down. Someone will see you when it's your turn." Something inside Amara broke. She slid to her knees right there on the cold tile floor, holding Malik close as his small body trembled. "Please," she whispered again, her voice almost gone. "Please, help my son." The lobby remained silent. Behind her, Dr. Whitman walked past once more, his gaze fixed firmly ahead, stepping around the kneeling mother and her dying boy as though they were part of the floor. And somewhere deep inside, a storm was beginning to rise. The ticking clock on the wall mocked Amara with every passing second. 1 hour. 2. Malik's breathing had grown shallower, his small chest rising and falling in uneven, desperate waves. She held him close, whispering prayers into his damp curls, her voice trembling. "Hold on, baby. Please, just hold on." The lobby remained indifferent. Patients were still called before her. A man with a sprained wrist, a woman complaining of migraines. A nurse stepped out to hand lollipops to a child whose only ailment was impatience. And still, no one called Malik's name. From the corner of her eye, Amara noticed the janitor, an older man with silver in his hair and tired kindness in his eyes. He paused his mopping, knelt beside her, and gently handed her a paper cup of water. "Ma'am, he looks like he needs fluids. I can't do more, but maybe this helps." Tears stung her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, clutching the cup as though it were hope itself. As she held Malik and coaxed a few sips past his lips, memories invaded her. The teacher who assumed she'd cheated on a test because of her skin. The store clerk who followed her down every aisle. The landlord who forgot to fix her heat in winter. Each moment of quiet cruelty had built a wall around her heart. But today that wall was cracking. Across the room, laughter rang out. Dr. Charles Whitman stood with 2 well-dressed patients, smiling as they shared stories about golf courses and vacation homes. He gestured toward Amara without lowering his voice. "We get a lot of walk-ins like that. It's usually not as urgent as they make it seem." Her fists clenched. Fury surged, not just for Malik, but for every time she had swallowed indignity to appear respectable. She rose to her feet, her voice trembling but firm. "My son is dying while you laugh," she shouted across the room. "Is that what care looks like here?" Heads turned. The laughter stopped. Dr. Whitman's expression tightened, but he didn't move. Ma'am, the receptionist snapped. Sit down or security will be called. Before Amara could respond, Malik's body jerked violently in her arms, then went limp. Malik! Her scream tore through the lobby as panic erupted. Nurses rushed forward, alarms blared, and the triage doors burst open. The boy who had been invisible moments ago was suddenly surrounded by hands and machines in urgency. Dr. Whitman stood frozen for a second before instinct took over, barking orders as Malik was wheeled toward the ER. Amara stumbled after them, tears streaming down her face, the echo of her own scream following them down the hall. A sound Dr. Whitman would not forget. The ICU monitors beeped in steady rhythm, a fragile reassurance in the aftermath of chaos. Malik lay pale and still beneath the thin white blanket, an oxygen mask covering half his tiny face. Dr. Charles Whitman stood at the foot of the bed, hands tucked into his coat pockets, eyes fixed on the boy he had almost ignored into silence. Vitals are stabilizing, a nurse reported quietly. We caught it in time. Whitman nodded, but the words didn't soothe him. He stared at the chart clipped to the foot of the bed, reading the name again and again. Malik Carter. Carter. Something about it gnawed at him. He'd seen that name before, on research papers, keynote lectures, perhaps even in the hospital board memos he had skimmed and dismissed. But it couldn't be. The answer walked through the door hours later. Amara entered the ICU like someone stepping into a sacred space. Her shoulders still trembled from hours of fear, but her chin was high. Nurses parted quietly, some avoiding her gaze out of shame. Whitman turned, and for the first time their eyes truly met. You saved him, she said softly, her voice neither warm nor cold, simply steady. Thank you for that. Whitman cleared his throat. We did what we could. He's a strong boy, silence stretched. Then she exhaled slowly. I didn't get a chance to introduce myself properly. I'm Dr. Amara Carter. The room seemed to tilt. Whitman blinked. Dr. Carter? She nodded. Harvard-trained epidemiologist, former WHO advisor. I spent the last 3 years in West Africa during the outbreak, and as of last month, she paused just long enough for his heartbeat to spike. I joined St. Albans as a member of your hospital board. The words landed like stones. Around them, the staff shifted uneasily. Whitman's throat went dry. He had dismissed her as a burden, a nuisance, a stereotype, and she outranked him. But it wasn't her status that burned him most. It was the quiet dignity with which she stood before him now. You didn't fail me today, Amara said, stepping closer, her voice calm but laced with a truth that pierced. You failed every patient who's ever looked like me, every parent you've ever dismissed before you knew their story. Whitman swallowed hard, but no words came. For the first time in his career, he didn't trust his own voice. Change doesn't start with policies, doctor, she added gently. It starts with people like you deciding to see us. Really see us. Her words echoed long after she left. And later that week, when Whitman entered the hospital's emergency board meeting, his breath caught again. At the head of the table, poised and resolute, sat Dr. Amara Carter, the woman he had stepped over in the hallway. The soft hum of monitors had long since faded from Amara's memory, replaced now by the sound she had feared she'd never hear again, Malik's laughter. Weeks had passed since that terrible night, and though a faint scar remained in her heart, her son was healing, running through their apartment with the unstoppable energy of a child who had conquered darkness and returned to light. But the hospital had not forgotten. Under Amara's guidance, changes swept through St. Albans. Diversity and sensitivity training became mandatory. New triage protocols were written to ensure every patient was treated with dignity. Anonymous reporting systems were installed to hold even the highest-ranking staff accountable. The walls of silence that once enabled prejudice began to crack, and yet, one man struggled more than anyone, Dr. Charles Whitman. He knocked on her office door one afternoon, his usually commanding posture replaced by hesitant humility. Dr. Carter, he began, voice low. May I speak with you? Amara gestured to the chair across from her. Of course. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Whitman exhaled shakily. I was raised to believe certain things about people who looked like you. My father, he taught me that they were lazy, irresponsible, and that they brought suffering on themselves. I never questioned it, not once. I thought I was being practical. His voice broke. But that day, I saw a child almost die because of what I refused to see, and I saw myself for what I really was. Amara listened in silence, not with pity, but with the steady gaze of someone who had carried the weight of other people's assumptions her entire life. I don't expect forgiveness, Whitman continued. I don't want to be that man anymore. The silence that followed was heavy, deliberate. Finally, Amara spoke. Forgiveness isn't mine to give, she said gently. But change. Real, uncomfortable, lasting change. That's possible. If you're willing to learn, I'll teach you. If you're willing to serve every patient with the same urgency you'd give your own family, then maybe one day you'll forgive yourself. Whitman nodded, tears glinting at the corners of his eyes. I want that, more than anything. Months later, in the same waiting room where Amara once knelt in despair, a young mother sat sobbing, clutching her feverish daughter. Before she could even rise, Dr. Whitman was beside her, kneeling, listening, calling for immediate care. From the doorway, Amara watched quietly, a faint, knowing smile touching her lips. Change was slow. It was painful. But here it was, real and alive before her eyes.